Hello, this is Eco Threads Crocheting Sustainably, and today I'm going to show you how to crochet a striped or single colored beanie. Please note that these tutorials are meant to go hand in hand with my pattern booklet, but they both contain the same information. Today we're covering the striped single colored beanie pattern 2. Here's what the final product looks like, but before we get into the pattern, note that you have two options in this tutorial. The first is where you can customize your size, and the second is for my specific measurements. Choose the one that you want to make. Now here are the details of the project. This pattern falls under the wearables category, meaning that you can wear it. Moving on to the materials, you're going to need a 4mm crochet hook, lilac and green 4-worsted yarn, a darning needle, scissors, and then stitch markers and a measuring tape is recommended. You can use this as a head accessory or clothing. Skills you'll learn include working in the row, color changes if you're interchanging colors, joining the same body of work, flexibility and adaptability in your projects, working in the back loop only, and working in the back bump of a chain. Stitches used are chain and half double crochet. First I'm going to explain how you can understand the structure of this beanie so it's easier for you to create. So you can decide whether you want to customize your beanie or follow the pattern for mine. The first option being the customized size. This choice is tailored more to your personalized style, meaning that the number of rows, colors, and sizing options are up to you, and therefore you need to look through the color options below to decide the method that you'd like to use for this. When you're using this method, note that not everything may align exactly and you will need to adjust your customizations as necessary. The number of rows done should fit around your head, and if needed, measure the circumference of your head at an angle that your beanie would sit using a measuring tape and crochet as many rows as you need to reach that length. If you're following the second option, which is my measured size, in this choice all the steps are given, including color changes and the colors themselves, to get the same measurements and look as my pattern. Just note that if you make my pattern, the measurements will need to be the same as your desired length. So your color options, you're going to have two. You can either create two interchanging striped colors or use a single color. For the first option, you'll need to change colors every 5 rows, and this pattern is written so you can choose which colors to be color A and B. Change colors when prompted using method 2 and refer to changing colors in episode 1 for help. Be aware that you may need to do fewer or more color changes so they fit your measurements, and in addition to this, make sure that the color in your last row is different from the color in your first row. So to do this, make sure that you have an even number of color changes. For example, I want my beanie to be 22 inches long, and I know that I'm changing colors every 5 rows. I know that I need an even number of color changes so that my colors are striped, so I decided to make 70 rows with 14 color changes. Now note that 14 color changes is an even number. This turned out to be 20 inches long. While this is shorter than I wanted it to be, my measurements don't have to be exact since the yarn is stretchy. In the case that your beanie is at your desired length but doesn't have an even number of color changes, you will need to decide whether you want to add 5 rows of the next color or remove 5 rows of the color you currently have. And basically just choose the option that best fits your measurements. Lastly, when you're weaving in your ends, tie the 2 tail ends at each color change and then weave them in like normally. If you're choosing option 2, which is a single color, you'll basically use one color for the entire beanie, disregarding any instructions for color changes and creating as many rows as you need. If the pattern does say to change colors, again, just ignore it and continue with your same color throughout the beanie. If you'd like to follow the pattern where you can customize your beanie size and colors, then please wait till the end so I can explain that, but this pattern will be how to follow the measured beanie size of my beanie. These final dimensions are approximately 11.75 by 8.25 inches, and the level of difficulty is 1 out of 3. This key is going to be used for color changes. Color A is going to be lilac and color B is going to be green. If you expect to get the same dimensions, sizing, and results, use the same yarn and crochet hook, ensuring that you have consistent stitches and tension to create the same project. This beanie sizing fits a head circumference of around 21 to 26 inches. If your 55 foundation chain you make in the beginning does not equal the foot, adjust your chain so it does and use that number of chains for your total stitch count at the end of each row instead of 55. Don't forget the last stitch at the end of every row, since this is a common mistake that beginners make. Count your stitches every few rows to confirm that you have the correct number of stitches, and don't count your turning chains, which is 2, as stitches, and don't go into them. Crocheting over your tail ends is not recommended, especially for this yarn. Step 1, we're going to be making the foundation of our beanie. So with color A, we're going to start with a slip knot. And we're going to chain 55. Now this should equal to a foot, And here you can just see that I'm measuring it to make sure that it does. But just know that as you crochet up, the sizing does tend to get a little bit smaller. So here I did chain 48 because I thought that would be enough, but this actually ended up being a little too short to my liking. So if you're creating this pattern, then I would recommend chaining 55, making sure it is a little longer than a foot. So after you do this, you're going to chain 2 and then turn, moving on to step 2. Step 2 is where we create the length of the beanie. So for row 1, we're going to half double crochet 1 into the back bump of the 3rd chain from the hook. So essentially we're skipping the chain 2 that we just made, we're turning our chain around, and we're going to half double crochet 1 into that back bump. You're going to go down the rest of the row, just placing 1 half double crochet into each of the back bumps of the chain across. Once you're finished with this step, you should end up with 55 stitches, assuming that you did chain 55 in the beginning. Here's how your project should look at the end of row 1. Now I'm just gonna double check the sizing on this. So right now you can see that it equals 12 inches or a foot, but as I built it up, it did get a little shorter, and that wasn't because I was dropping stitches, but that's just how it is. So again, chain 2, turn, and from row 2 to 5 we're gonna half double crochet 1 in the back loop only in each stitch across. So again, that first stitch, disregarding the turning chains, we're going to go into the back loop only, so you should only go into 1 loop, and we're going to half double crochet 1. So not into the full stitch, but just into that back loop right here. Again, just place 1 half double crochet into the back loop only of every single stitch, and this is basically how you're going to build up the entire beanie. These are all half double crochets, these are all back loop only. You're just going to place that in every stitch across, so you should end up with 55 stitches at the end of each row. And also at the end of the row, you are going to chain 2, turn, and then repeat the same steps. You'll notice it creates this ribbon-like texture, and this is what we want. Again, when you reach the end of the row, don't forget about that last stitch. Half double crochet 1 back loop only, and then chain 2 and turn. And then again, until you reach row 5, you're going to continue with color A, just working 1 half double crochet into each back loop. And again, 55 stitches should be your total stitch count at the end of each of these rows. This is what your project should be looking like so far. So here I'm just finishing up my last couple half double crochets on row 5. And here I'm just going to be looping my new color right before I end that final stitch on row 5. So I'm going to loop color B onto it. This is method 2. And then I'm going to chain 2, tightening my tail ends. This is when I want to cut my color A yarn just long enough to weave, and then I'm going to tie these 2 tail ends from A and B together just so it's more secure, but I'm not going to weave them in now. I'm going to weave them in at the end. So just tie it or do a double knot and then move on to the next rows. So from rows 6 to 10 we're going to be using colored B, and again we're still half double crocheting 1 into the back loop only in each stitch across, and then ending the row with a chain 2 and then turning. Again, you should always end with 55 stitches. So again, this is how you'll create 5 rows. Here I'm just finishing up my final half double crochets in the back loop only of row 10, and this is where I will color change in the last stitch of that row. So in this stitch right before I yarn over and pull through, I'm going to loop my new color onto that last yarn over, pull it so that you have enough of a tail end so that you can weave in your ends, chain 2, and then you're just going to cut colored B's tail end. And then just tie these two together so that it's secure. So following this pattern of 5 rows per color, we're going to be doing rows 11 through 15 with color A, and then it should be this repeated pattern until you make the length of the beanie. So we're going to create 5 rows of each color until we reach row 70, leaving us with 14 color changes like I mentioned before. So again, half double crochet 1 into the back loop only. When you reach the end of the row, chain 2, turn. You should have 55 stitches at the end of each row, and you will color change on the last stitch before you need your new color. Okay, so here's what mine looks like so far. I only made it to 8 color changes just because I kind of ran out of yarn, but you still go through the same steps, so hopefully you guys can still follow along. But you should have made 70 rows with 14 color changes, and that length should fit around your head. Once you do that, then you're gonna weave in your ends, and as you can see, I've already weaved in all of my ends here, so it looks nice and neat. And then we're going to move on to step 3, which is joining our panel. So just to double check if it's the right size, we're going to fold the beanie hamburger style like this and fit it onto your head right here, making sure that the size is appropriate and making any appropriate changes if necessary. So now that we're going to connect it, I just want to clarify what's the right and wrong side of the beanie. So this can be a little hard to tell, but the right side does have sharper ribbings created from the back loops only. So you can see that this is the wrong side and this is the right side. So we're going to be connecting our panel on the wrong side so that we can flip it onto its right side. So this is the wrong side, and then we're just gonna flip it hamburger style, and we're gonna be connecting this panel right here. So with your wrong sides facing out and the right sides facing in, you're going to refer to joining pieces in episode 1 to connect the panel together using the starting stitch to begin, and you're gonna go across until you reach your final stitch. So with either color A or B yarn, I'm just using A, we're going to use about 20 inches of yarn to join it, keeping your stitches lined up across the panel. Your starting stitch is going to be your first half double crochet on the farthest right side, and then you're just going to go into the front loop of the first side and the back loop of the next side. And then you're just going to begin by tying a knot into that first starting stitch, like so, giving yourself a long enough end for joining and weaving in your ends, and then you just gotta cut a tail end. So again, go into your next half double crochet, go into the front loop on the first side and the back loop of the next side with its corresponding stitch. Pull it through to connect, and then you're going to do this across. Your final stitch you're going to go into is going to be the farthest left half double crochet and its corresponding stitch on the other side. And you're going to go all the way until you reach that stitch to join. This is what your project should look like so far after you joined it. Here's how the wrong side will look. We can see the seam we connected it with, and this is the right side and how it should look. So now we're going to move on to step 4, which is closing the top, and basically we cinch the top to create this round shape. So it will be like this to finish it off. So to close the top, you're going to keep your beanie on the wrong side, attach a piece of yarn with any color that you used to the top edge that you attach the sides in. So right when you finish that seam, you're going to attach the yarn, leaving a long enough tail end for weaving. And then you're just going to tie a knot to secure that starting point. And then now we're going to be leaving a long enough tail end to weave in your ends after we're finished. So first we're going to go into every other ribbing stitch, and this is going to be one ribbing stitch, next one, and then the one after is the one we're going into. So go into the first one and then skip one, go into the next one. So when you attach it, you're going to be going into the ribbing part on the upper edge. So go into this first one from the inside, from the outside in. So we're going to be going back and forth, skipping every other ribbing part. So this is how it should start to look like. So you skip this one, move on to the next ribbing, go from the outside in, and then this next one we're going to skip the ribbing, go into the next one from the inside out. You're going to repeat this process until you go all the way around the beanie, and you're just going to loosely place your yarn into these stitches, into these points, and you don't have to worry about making your yarn tight just yet, as we'll do that later. So skip a ribbing, go into the next one, and then go back and forth from the outside in and inside out. Once you reach the end, you should be back at that first tail end that you created a knot with, and just go back into that space to finish it off. And then here's the fun part. You're going to tighten this really tightly to see it close, and then you're going to go back into the parts that are sticking out just to secure. Now your beanie should have more rows, so you should have to go through this more times than I did, but because you will have had more rows, it will be more secure and closed. But because mine is a little smaller, then the holes are popping out a bit more. So just keep that in mind, that I do go through the top of the beanie to secure it even more, a little more than you normally would. So to close it even more, I'm just going to look at whatever parts that are popping out, and I'm just going to go into that. So you can see I go back in and I come out on one of the sides that have a hole in it, pull my yarn tight, and then I'm going to go through a couple of more stitches just to keep it secure, and I'm going to go across here just to bring those two sides together. And then once you're done fully closing the top, you're just going to tie it multiple times again, and then you're going to weave in your ends just to finish the project. This is how your project should look after you close the top, and you're just going to put your beanie inside out so it's on the right side, and then fold the bottom edge up about 2 inches, and then this is how you create a beanie, and I hope you enjoyed this pattern. Here's the bigger size, which is the one you should have made, and then the smaller size, which is the one I made. So now I'm going to be going into how you can create your own customized beanie. Okay, so since you guys kind of know how to make this beanie already with my size, I'm going to show you guys how you can make your own customized size. So now that you know kind of the gist of how you're going to create this. So the final dimensions of this, of course, are going to depend on your desired size, and the level of difficulty is 1.5 out of 3. So just some notes are, again, don't forget about the last stitch at the end of each row, because this is a common mistake to forget it. Don't forget to count your stitches at the end of each row every so often, just to make sure that you have the same amount of stitches and you aren't accidentally increasing or decreasing. Again, crocheting over tail ends are not recommended, especially with this yarn. And then when you chain the length of your beanie like we did in the first pattern, remember the number of chains that you crocheted, because you're going to need that number for the total stitch count, so you know how many stitches you should have at the end of each round. So whatever length you chain, that will be equal to a foot. Keep that number down, and then at the end of each row, just make sure that you have that amount of stitches. So again, don't count your turning chains, which is 2 chains, as stitches, and we're not going to be going into them. But other than that, the structure is basically the same. You're going to start step 1 with your foundation with your color A, whatever you choose that to be. So you can choose the same colors I did, you can choose different colors, but you're going to start with the slip knot. You're going to chain the length that's equal to a foot, so that when you're chaining, just have the chain sit normally. Don't like stretch it, and you want to chain a little over than 12 inches or a foot, because as you can see, I chained what I thought would be like the perfect amount, but it ended up being a little smaller than I like. So this is a little more than a foot, and remember that chain length is this part right here, and then you still need enough to fold over the edge like this. Again, it's the same structure, you just have double crocheting 1 into each stitch across, chaining 2, turn, and then you're going to be doing the 5 rows. If you're doing the single color, you don't have to worry about changing colors, you don't have to worry about tying your 2 colors and weaving in so many ends, because I do know that this one you do have to weave in a lot of ends if you're color changing a lot, but it is worth it and it looks very, very cute. So yeah, you're just gonna continue working as many rows as you need to fit your head. As you can see, this one fits quite nicely on my head, and my head circumference is like 24 inches, something like that. But again, keep creating rows until it meets your desired length. And your beanie can be smaller if you're making it for like a child, then I guess you don't have to make it as long if you're making it really tiny. But those are just some notes for how to make your own beanie, and yeah, it is really tailored to what you want your beanie to look like, so you just do it based on what you feel like is the right amount. But yeah, that's how you make this beanie using either my pattern or making your own. Yeah, but I hope that this pattern helps you to make your own beanie. Thanks for watching this episode of Eco Threads. I hope you learned something new, and I appreciate you for all your support. Mahalo.